start with the dollar as always. So last time we spoke, we were looking a tad bearish. We were mapping out some support to our left, and we were speaking about potentially a bounce at this area, so potentially some strength coming back into the dollar. We're looking at potentially a bit of a bottom, to be honest, for the dollar, because we are expecting a lot more retracement. We've seen the past kind of week, we've seen retracement. Well, the start of the week we had that drop, but since then the market has been a bit bullish. I'm expecting a lot more upside than that, to be honest, in the next coming days. We've taken out some major support to our left. The market itself was quite overextended, quite stretched. So likely we are to see some upside. The weekly candle looks a little bit bullish today. We still have about 13 or 14 hours. Is that correct? Well, it looks to be. We've still got about 14 hours before that candle does close. So a lot could happen in that time. But if it does close like that, it is a big indication that momentum, initially a couple of weeks back, all this bearish momentum has kind of hit a bit of a plateau. And we might be forming a bit of a bottom here and seeing some upside for the next couple of weeks or so. So that does leave me a little bit bullish there with the dollar. And of course, looking at the 4-hour chart, we did in fact respect this level and use it as support. Nothing crazy. We have seen a bit of a bounce, but again, haven't really seen much momentum come from that level, which is a key aspect. If we kind of just move sideways, then we'll end up consolidating and then potentially might even roll over again. But I think this is still a critical level. I'm looking at a bit of an inverse head and shoulder pattern here. You got your left, your head, and of course your right shoulder. We respect the support pretty well yesterday. I think if we can break through the high there, especially with some momentum as well, that could be an indication that, okay, we've got a trend on our hands and there could be some nice intraday buys following that to the upside. But in terms of my buys for the dollar, I'm still pretty much long-term bearish. I'm looking at some areas up here to short the dollar. So this low here or even this low here. These are the areas I'm kind of looking for price to pull back into before I can consider shorting USD again. But in the meantime, I'm looking for some upside. So that's kind of my bias right now for the dollar. Looking for some upside, for some shorts later on. And that's the exact same situation for Euro. Euro, we didn't see much upside yesterday. I was talking about potentially a retest of this level, kind of corresponding to the level we just mentioned on the dollar. The dollar looks like we're forming an inverse head and shoulder, whereas Euro looks like we're forming a regular head and shoulder with the left head and possible right shoulder. As you can see, we didn't quite get there. We did, in fact, have a test early in the week. But it would have been nice to have another test again, so you can put your stop loss above and it will improve the risk to reward. Yeah, with this setup now for Euro, I still have the same bias as yesterday. Again, it would still be nice if we were to see some upside back into that level to perhaps short it again. I'm not so interested myself personally with shorting Euro. I'm still pretty bullish with this one as a whole. So the same setup with the dollar pretty much applies here as well. Market's taking out some major highs to the left. It looks like we're running out of steam. The current weekly candle is looking pretty bearish. I'm expecting this to potentially close bearish as well. Of course, depends what happens the rest of the day. But if it does close bearish, it's a big sign that says, okay, momentum is running out. Probably we're going to retrace now. So we could be seeing downside for the next week or two. And if we could push back into areas like such, I'll be more than happy to start looking for some longs to take Euro back up again. So again, bias for Euro USD is short-term bearish for longer-term bullish opportunities. So I'm just hoping we can see that pullback. And that's pretty much the same outlook I have for a lot of the USD pairs. Pound, dollar CAD, Aussie dollar, even dollar CHF, which has been exceptionally bearish. But yeah, pound USD as well. We've come into some major resistance to the left here. I do think longer term, we have a good chance of breaking through this level and seeing a lot more upside. I spoke briefly yesterday about potentially move back to 1.4, potentially 1.45, but I think we'll just call it at 1.4. That's a really big psychological level, so I think we'll just call it at that for now. So I do still have a bullish bias for pound USD past this point, but in terms of actually trading it, I need price to pull back, and 1.31, 1.3 are kind of the areas I'm looking for us to pull back into. If I whip out a fib from the last swing low to the most recent swing high, you can see we've got the 50, 0.618 in this area. That's generally the areas I do feel comfortable if I'm looking for a big trade, because I know that the market has had a healthy pullback and the likeliness to see another big move is a bit more in my favor at that point. If the pullback's pretty shallow, then I'm going to typically look for a shallow move. I'm not going to be looking for anything crazy. But yeah, pound USD respecting the highs there pretty well. I do think there's a bit more room for us to fall into. How we're looking on the weekly chart. Again, seeing a bit of a wick there to the upside. So again, implying that we are rejecting these highs and potentially getting ready to sell off. Of course, again, take that with a pinch of salt, because the weekly candle could still change. It's not going to close just yet. But again, if we can make our way back down to 1.31, 1.3, I'll be happy to pick up some longs from here. Of course, considering price action looks good for that as well. And then, yeah, take some longs and take it back to highs. I don't think I'll be aiming for 1.4 just yet, but that would be the plan there for pound USD. Again, there might be some shorts on the way as well. Depends what you're looking for pound. If you're focused on some buys, then of course you're looking for price to probably pull back some more. It does look like potentially price is forming some type of lower high right now. We had initially a high over there, had another higher high, price respected the resistance, and perhaps we are trying to form a lower high here to come back down. So there could be some shorts there, a bit more counter trend, slightly bit more aggressive trade. But again, taking in the context of where the market's situated and how we're looking, it does make some sense. So if you're looking for some shorts, I do think pound USD looks good for it. But again, I'm expecting that just to be a pullback for us to continue higher later on. So that's my take there on pound. Let's take a look at dollar CAD next. So dollar CAD, same situation as this, as the other USD pairs. It looks like we're retracing. We spoke a lot about this level here yesterday. We did see a lovely bounce, and then price came back again and had another bounce to that level. So we had a bounce pretty much after we ended the stream. Price pushed up back to resistance, came back down. This was as the daily candle was closing and the new one was opening. So for today, price respected it again and had another bounce there, and we're looking pretty bullish since then. So dollar CAD, again, it looks like we're forming potentially a bit of a bottom now. Again, taking in consideration how corrective we've been as well, the fact that we are starting to break above this consolidation and use it as support. Potentially, we could be on our way to the upside now. I'm not so bullish on dollar CAD as in I'm expecting a massive move here. I just think the market is in need of a bit of a breather, a retracement for us to continue selling off. And these are the couple areas I'm looking at: the retest of that low and the retest of this low. So it depends how much we pull back and how price looks when we pull back as well. But from one of those two areas, I do think another lower high can form. We've got one over there. This is the daily chart, by the way. High over there. There's your low. Next lower high. There's your low. Either here or here. Generally, that area is where I think another lower high could form, and we could be on our way. So perhaps now it's time for that pullback. Again, if you're looking to buy dollar CAD, I feel like you kind of already want to be in the trade. We've respected resistance turn support here. Ideally, these are kind of the areas you want to be picking some longs from. You don't necessarily want to be entering now, or if you do enter now, you're going to have a slightly bigger stop loss than which is kind of ideal. If you could enter here, stop loss there, maximize your risk reward and push your entry in a nice place as well. Perhaps if we were to break structure again, there might be some opportunities on a retest, so I would consider that. But that's probably a setup until next week. So probably not going to have to be too concerned about that just yet. But yeah, looking for some retracement for dollar CAD back into those areas. And then we can probably speak about some shorts in the next coming days. Aussie dollar, I'm pretty bullish on this one as well. I like the fact that we are still stalling at the highs. It means that a retracement is on the cards here. I've been calling for a retracement for a while, but you can see just bullish candle after bullish candle for Aussie, but now looks like we're really struggling at the highs here. So perhaps now it's time to retrace. There's a couple areas I'm looking at. So you got the low there at 0.62350, and also this level here as well. Not as significant, but definitely an area which could act as support and send price higher. I also spoke about the break and retest of this level, but it does not look like that's happening right now. So not going to be too concerned with that just yet. But again, it looks like Aussie dollar is really struggling at the highs here. So I do anticipate a bit of a sell-off here for Aussie. But the bigger move, I still favor the longs. So whether we have that big buy from 0.632 or 0.623, not too bothered, just looking for a good trade here. But as you can see, a bit of a double top there. Looks like we're forming another lower high here as well. So in my book, it does look like Aussie dollar is likely to drop here. But I expect that just to be retracement for us to continue going high. So there might be some nice intraday shorts, even for a push back to that low there. How many pips is that? I mean, from current price, 40 pips. So it's still not a bad position. I mean, the only thing is that your stop loss, if it's above there, it's probably just barely breaking a 1-to-1. So ideally, probably want to be dropping even lower, maybe to the 15-minute chart to trade that to get a decent risk to reward. But yeah, anyway, expect some retracement there for some more upside later on. And then it ends the USD. Looks like the same situation is occurring. Market's putting in some lower highs now. We had kind of like a double top over there, if you will. And then the market forms a lower high. Now looks like it's forming another one. So it does look like New Zealand dollar's running out momentum, and perhaps it is time to pull back. That is music to my ears. That's what I want to be. That's what I want the market to be doing. If we can pull back, I've got a lovely level just below us. Again, nothing crazy. Pull back to 0.58. I think that's pretty reasonable. If we can get there, react with that level, I do think there's a good chance of high-low forms, and we could be on our way for a pretty big swing. In terms of gold, gold's a little bit bearish. We've seen some downside for gold finally. So we had that big drop, price pullback, and then things got a little bit shaky as we came back into that resistance. So this was the level we were discussing yesterday with that kind of head and shoulder pattern. So of course you got the left shoulder over there, you got the head up there, and of course this will be your right shoulder. So I said yesterday that keep an eye on this level. This could be a nice place for a short. In fairness, it kind of happened during the Asian session, so depends what session you look to trade there. You might have been sleeping whilst that happens. I know I was. But price did eventually come back for that double top, rejected it pretty well. I think, again, you probably want to be dropping even to the 15-minute chart for entering there, just to really refine that stop loss. But yeah, lovely move to the downside. Now we're coming back into areas of support here. So now it's up to gold what next move is. Are we going to break through support here? Well, if we do that, then we're starting to get some bearish structure on the 4-hour chart. So initially you got your high up there, and then you've got your low. Now you've got your lower high, and of course after that would be a lower low. So I would still be bullish on gold, but I probably wouldn't look to buy it until we get a retest of the high here. Because at that point, you've got some bearish structure. I don't know how big of a pullback we're going to have for gold. I'm expecting a pretty big one. I don't know if this is going to be the big retracement now, or is this just a slightly bigger counter trend for us to continue higher. I still like the buys from here. I'm not too sure if it would be a situation where gold just flies to the upside and everything is back to normal in terms of the uptrend. But I still think this is a nice space for a buy. But yeah, I'm just keen to see what gold does now at that low. Do we break through, or do we start to bounce again, or consolidate even? But I still like the buys from 31.66. And then silver, lastly. Yeah, silver, spoke about some buys yesterday. I'm not so keen with buying silver, to be honest, in terms of a long-term move because of where we're situated. Just generally speaking, this is a massive area of supply. Not really where I want to engage with silver in terms of a bigger swing trade. Intraday, sure, I think there'll be some nice buys there. I talked about the breakout of the range here yesterday. I think that'll be a really nice place to pick up some longs, to be honest, if price was to get there again. I also like the fact that we're kind of just hovering just above the support level. Potentially, we'll probably have some early buys in there. Could flush them out, retest that zone, and then see a bounce. I think that could be a really nice trade, but I wouldn't try and take it past the highs here. Of course, lead positions to run. Potentially, we could go further. I'm not to know that until it actually does happen. But just because of where we're situated, I wouldn't try and swing a trade very far. I feel like the market's probably going to have a little bit of a sell-off at some point. Maybe when gold has a bit of a sell-off too. then maybe we do something like that. So that's kind of what I'm interested for the bigger move there for silver. But intraday trade, I think a retest of that level there looks pretty good.